Hi guys, welcome back to Scott Family Homestead. Today we're working on a canning project. I picked up 5 dozen ears of sweet corn from our local roadside stand. This is a large quantity of sweet corn. If you want to do this project, you do not need to purchase this many. You want to keep in mind that it takes about 3 to 4 ears of corn per pint, or about 8 ears for a quart. So we have a ton here. I'm trying to do it all in one day. I'll run 2 pressure canners to do this. And with that being said, let's talk about what we need to get this done. First of all, you're going to need your sweet corn. Farmers markets and roadside stands have this right now all over Wisconsin, and so it is the perfect time to do this. It's the perfect ripeness and sweetness. We are going to use this really large pot back here because what we're gonna do after cleaning all these up, we're gonna blanch them for about 3 minutes and then get them into ice water. So you're gonna need a large pot to blanch these. You don't have to, not every recipe, like the ball canning recipe, doesn't require blanching, but it is so much easier to remove the kernels from the cobs if you blanch them a bit, and it retains the color of it. So next you're gonna need a cutting utensil of some sort. I have used a bunch of different types of corn cutting tools. This one is by far my favorite. It's a wooden one with a curved blade on it, and it works so well. They also make handheld tools you can do this with, but I find that this one has a little bit more stability to it. You can put it right into the bowl and all the kernels fall in. Big fan of this tool. You can use just a serrated knife if you don't have one of these. You have a little bit more waste with the knife, but it would work perfectly fine without any special tools. We're going to raw pack all of our kernels into jars, and we're going to then put boiling water over top of it and can it all in a pressure canner. So for corn, it is a low acid food. It has to be pressure canned. You can follow the first portion of this where we are cleaning these up, blanching them and removing the kernels, and then freeze them or freeze dry them if you prefer. I do have a video for freeze drying corn, and I will link it in the description. That is probably my favorite way to have corn. Second best is canned, but the freeze dried corn is delicious on its own, but it's also really handy to dump like a cup or 2 cups of freeze dried corn into your soups, and it absorbs all that broth and goodness, and it is really delicious. So if you have a freeze dryer, I will link that video below. But otherwise, you can follow the first portion of this video for however you want to preserve your corn, and then we will go on to talking about pressure canning it from that point forward. So first things first, I have to shuck all 5 dozen here. I'm hoping I can get some helpers to help me out, but we're going to get it all cleaned up first and washed, and then we're going to go ahead and start the blanching process. We'll make this a fancy little magic trick. We've got all of our corn. It is all shucked and it is ready to go. I have this memory with my dad. He used to have one of those old camcorders from the 90s where you put like the whole tape in it and it sat on your shoulder. He used to take videos of us, and then he would turn the camera off and have us leave, and then he'd turn the camera back on and it would be like we disappeared. It was his magic videos, and as kids we thought it was the greatest thing ever, but rewatching them you can hear us in the background going, "Dad, we're over here," like totally ruining it, but it's so funny to watch. I just thought of that memory this morning when I was doing the little finger snap. Anyways, we've got all of our corn shucked. It was mostly in good condition. I think we lost 2 ears that just had some ucky spots, and we cut off any other bad spots. So I'm gonna go ahead. I have my water boiling. I'm going to put these each in there for about 3 minutes. Since I have such a large pot, I can do quite a few at a time. So we're going to do that, and then I brought over a big tub. I'm going to put my ice water in here and just put all the corn in here and get it cooled down. I think that's going to be our best bet for that. So I'm going to get some ice water in there. I'm going to get some of these put into the pot that's boiling here. I also have my canner. I have an All-American 921. And this is going to fit 18 pints. So I'm going to go ahead and do a double stack. I've got the first row in there already. I'm going to put the rest of these jars into the canner and get that warming the jars. What we're going to do with this, It's going to be a while to get all of these taken care of, but what we're going to do is use hot jars and raw packed kernels, and then we're going to add boiling water, and then we'll get it all put into our pressure canner. So first things first, loading up the pressure canner, kind of getting that warmed, and working our way through this 3 minutes at a time to get this blanched, and then we will start removing the kernels from the cobs. Now I suspect that 5 dozen ears will be more than one canner load, and so we're just going to see how much we have left over at the end and decide if we want to get a second canner going or if we want to freeze dry or freeze what's left. It really just depends on what quantity of kernels I have left over at that point. So we're going to do 18 pints to start. Last time I did 5 dozen, I had 22 jars, but some of those were quarts. So, and I don't have it written down exactly how many I did. So that gives you kind of an idea. I would expect 24 to 28 pints from this, but we'll see. Just start working our way through it, I guess. Could probably fit more, but I'm going to do a dozen at a time and just do it in batches. This project is definitely a labor of love at this point. I am pretty exhausted with the canning. We do a lot of canning in the fall, so I'm just getting to the point where I'm kind of exhausted with filling the pantry. And I know that this will pay off, but I'm kind of dragging my feet on it. So that is why we're doing 5 dozen in one day. Get as many pints put up as possible and just be done with it. I still have so many tomatoes, and I haven't even started apples yet. So I haven't even started apples yet. What I do with my apples, I have a steam juicer, and we'll cook down the apples in that and take a lot of the juice off and can it, and then I use the remaining pulp to make applesauce. So that's going to be a whole project, hopefully next week. We'll see how that goes. But definitely hitting that fall time exhaustion right now. So just trying to get this done. We're right at 3 minutes with this. I'm going to get it put into the ice water. I'm going to work my way through all 5 dozen, and then we'll come back and talk about cutting the corn off. Okay, I have my second dozen boiling, and we're going to go ahead and start cutting these. If you cut the ends of your corn off, like this one had a bad spot, that's actually kind of helpful, but I didn't do that on all of them. And with this, you're going to put it right over your bowl, and it's going to be messy. Your workstation is going to get sticky because of the sweetness of the sweet corn, and it will spray a bit. But if you do the knife, maybe you don't get sprayed so much, I don't know. But you want to put this either at the front end of your bowl, or you can even put it outside of your bowl like this. And we're going to have several bowls of this by the time we are done here. These all go to the chickens. They will not go to waste. I'm going to work my way through this, and I will come back once I have bowls and bowls of kernels. We got 3 very large bowls of corn. I have all of these. These are all going to go out to the chickens. I am covered in corn because it is definitely messy. So I'm going to go change my shirt. I'm going to bring all of this out to the chickens. I just started a pot of water, and so we're going to get that boiling. We're going to pack this into the hot jars and then top it with boiling water. So I need to get some water boiling. So while that gets started, I'm going to go take care of these things and get out of this sticky mess. We're going to go ahead and get this put into jars. I'm going to pull them all out with my jar lifter. I also have a funnel here and a spatula to get the air bubbles out. Essentially, what you're going to do here is put corn with a 1-inch headspace. You don't want to pack it down in, just nice and loose in there. We're going to top it off with boiling water and keep that 1-inch headspace. Make sure you remove all of the bubbles and add more water if needed. Once you have that set, I've got brand new lids. You can reuse your rings, but you want to use brand new lids. And we're going to wipe our rims. We're going to put a brand new lid on there and finger tight on the top of that and load them up into our pressure canner. I have 18 jars in there right now. I'm going to go ahead and pull them all out and do this all at once. If you are double layering your jars, make sure you have that extra rack in there. So you need to have a rack on top of the other jars. With your pressure canner, you want just a couple inches of water in the bottom. Read the manual of your pressure canner to see specifically what yours requires. When you're doing the corn here, you could also add salt. You would put a half a teaspoon per pint, or if you're doing quarts, you would do a full teaspoon. Go ahead and get these with a 1-inch headspace. If you have one of these spatulas, they do have the markings on it, and so you can check your depths. Right at the point where the curve comes in is going to be about 1 inch. I'm just going to do that for every one. I can already tell, not quite done yet here, but I still have half of this bowl and this whole bowl, so I'm going to go ahead and get my second canner going as soon as I finish up here. Which is a huge blessing to have this much food. So, this corn could be set aside and done after the first load if you just have the one. I only have 2 because I upgraded to the All-American after a while. I also have a T-foul that was kind of my beginner canner. But as I've started growing more food for our family, I use both of them side by side more and more. I'm not pushing any of this down tight, but I am making sure it gets into that little curve in the jar. Now we're just going to ladle in our boiling water. So what I'm doing here is I'm just working around each jar, and all the way to the bottom you can see little bubbles coming up as you press something along the sides. You can do something smaller than the spatula too, but kind of want to go around the sides, give it a little wiggle, and then also right through the middle. Make sure all those bubbles come up. If you need to, top it off with just a little bit of water until you're right at that 1 inch. We're going to wipe the rim and then put our lid on. I now have enough to go in the bottom of my canner, so I'm going to load these in and then I'll come back and finish the rest. For this recipe, it's 10 pounds of pressure and then adjust for altitude. So in our altitude, on a dial gauge, it would be 11 pounds. But with a weighted gauge, which is the kind of canner that this is, we're going to go 15 pounds. And it's going to be 55 minutes for pints, 85 minutes for quarts. So we're going to do 55 minutes because we only have pints. On your All-American, it has a little arrow here. So you're going to set this on and twist it so your arrow points to this little divot right here. There's no gaskets on this, so you want to make sure that it is oiled as well. With this, you want to keep this gap here level all the way around. The way that you do that is to tighten the opposite sides. So you'll tighten this one and this one back here equally. And at this point the canner's hot, so you gotta be careful, but always read your canner manual. Yes, I do this and I am showing on YouTube how to do it, but you should always know the rules for yourself and listen to your manual. So that's my little disclaimer. So we look pretty even all the way around. It's tightened down nice. We are not going to put the weight on yet. What we need to do is let this, once it's got a steady stream of steam, we're going to let it go for 10 minutes. Then we'll put our weight on at 15 pounds. Then we're going to wait until this gets up to 15 pounds and our weight starts rocking. That is when we start our timer for the 55 minutes. So we've got a little bit of time to just wait for this to do its thing. I'm going to get my T-Fal canner going over here. This one is a dial gauge, so I'll show you that one too. It works a little bit differently, and I think I'm just going to do 9 in here, and that should be the rest of my jars. So I'm going to get these jars heated up, get them packed with the corn and the water, and then we will have 2 canners going with slightly different times. So some of this is probably really repetitive or redundant if you are a canner who has been doing this for a very long time, but a lot of us haven't been doing it all that long. I don't have family members who canned and could teach me how to can, and so I hope that I can be that resource for some of you who have not canned before and give you some confidence to do it. This is a more expensive canner and I do really love it and I highly recommend it, but if you're just getting started or you have access to one of the Prestos or T-Fals or one of the better budget-friendly canners, I want to show you how that works as well. The benefit to this one is that it doesn't have a gasket, and so you never have to replace any parts, and this canner will last forever and ever and ever. This one does have a gasket, and actually the T-Fal, I'm having a hard time finding gaskets for it, and so that's kind of the downside there, is when your gasket wears out, it's harder to get replacement parts, and it may even become obsolete at some point to where you have to buy a new canner anyway. So this one is an investment heirloom, hand it down to your kids kind of piece. And mine, I have the bigger one so that I can do the double rack of pints. They do make it even bigger where you can do double rack of quarts, I believe, or smaller where you can do just one rack of pints or quarts. I like to do a bunch of pints all at once, so this was ideal for me. If you are just getting started, don't be afraid. If you don't have a family member or a close friend who can help teach you how to can, there's so many good resources here on YouTube who can walk you through it, but the best advice I can give you is just to read your canner manual. There's so much information in there, and once you've read that through a couple of times, you're really going to have no issue pressure canning. It has a reputation of being really scary, but I promise you it isn't, and you can do it. So T-Fal, this is that gasket that I'm talking about, so you want to make sure that that is good. Make sure everything is clear. You want to look through and make sure there's nothing stuck in there. We're going to kind of line up our handles here, this way, and then they lock into place when the handle comes together. And we leave it on this steam setting. Again, we're going to let it steam for 10 minutes. And then this one has a 1, 2, and 3. It's 5, 10, and 15 pounds of pressure. And then once you get into that range, you watch the dial and make sure you're at your pressure. So for us, it's 11 pounds once you get it on that 3rd setting. But first, we have to let it steam, and then we can turn this on. But this is basically your weight on this one. And that is that. This one is just starting to steam, but this is not enough. We need to be able to see and hear a steady stream. So I'll show you that in just a minute. I don't think you can see it on camera, but this is steaming pretty good, and so we're going to start our 10-minute timer now. You can definitely hear it. So we're going to start our timer, and we're still waiting on this one. I can hear it boiling pretty good, but it's not steaming yet. Now we've got both of them going here. They're both steaming pretty good. It's been 10 minutes, so we're going to find our weight, and this one has the 15 down here, and so we want to set it on right like that. That steam is hot, so I'm going to use a little oven mitt. Now again, we're not starting our timer yet. We're going to wait until this starts to rock and starts to make some noise, and our gauge reads at 15 pounds of pressure. We're very close to it. These canners, the dial can be off by up to 2 pounds of pressure. You can have it checked at your local extension office, but otherwise, trust the rocker. My other canner is about 7 minutes behind, so we're going to do 7 minutes of steam yet before we turn that dial to 3. Okay, I turned it to 3 on this one now, and we're just about to start rocking on this one. Once it starts to rock, we're going to dial it way back to a simmer, and that is going to keep a steady temperature. On your stove, you probably want to use a smaller burner for this. Here's our jiggle. Let's turn this way down. You only want it to jiggle for a short time, 1 to 4 times a minute. This other canner is on a small burner in the back. It might take a little bit longer to get up to pressure, but I can better maintain the pressure and dial it way down when the time comes. So I'm just going to listen to this rocker and make sure it's rocking 1 to 4 times every minute, and I can do other things in here while that goes. I do have to babysit my dial gauge a little bit closer so I have eyes on it, so I know that it's sitting in that 11 to 12 pound range. So that one is still coming up to pressure, and I'll set a separate timer for that. When we are done with the 55 minutes, we're going to turn our burners off and just leave it while it depressurizes. We're not going to remove our weights or turn this dial until we are at 0. So full 55 minutes, and then we're going to let them come down from pressure on their own. Both of my canners are done with their 55 minutes. The weights are still on. We are going to let these come down to 0 pressure, and then we are going to release the weights. After that, we will remove the tops, and then we're going to let it sit for about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more, and then take all the jars out, and we're done. You don't want to move a pressure canner when it has any pressure to it. But now that these are open, I can scoot them around a bit. I don't know if you can see it, but I just got a new range hood. And part of the reason was with my old one, it was really big and bulky, and I couldn't lift jars out of my canners very easily. So I got this new slim one, so I can better lift my jars out. You can see how good that looks. I'm very excited. I was really feeling like I didn't want to do this today, and I powered through. Now I'm really glad that I did. I'm going to appreciate this in the winter. There it is, 26 pints of corn ready to go. This will all cool down, and as long as they all seal, then in about 24 hours we'll remove all of the rings, get everything cleaned and labeled and onto the pantry shelves. So I'm very excited that we finally got this all done. I want to say it was about 5.5 dozen corn. You can hear them popping, it's so fun. And it made 26. So I would say 5 dozen would probably make about 24 pints. Very, very happy with how this turned out. I hope it inspires you to can something today, get that pressure canner out. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you for subscribing and following along on our journey here on YouTube. We are also on Instagram and Facebook. I do more daily posts and daily stories over there if you want to follow along with that. But otherwise, I will catch you on the next one. Bye guys.